No, unfortunately, the title is not clickbait. I do believe that Anointments and their launch issues have returned from Borderlands 3, they're just going by a different name in Borderlands 4, and in their own ways are actually worse than Anointments were at launch of BL3. Before getting on into that though, I do just want to give some context real quick for those that maybe weren't around in the early days of BL3 or haven't played it. Anointments were a system that added additional effects onto your guns. This was kind of like a separate part roll that would roll on top of your gun. It would be listed on the item card, and they would give you very strong effects that would help with your build drastically, such as while under 50% health, you gain 100% bonus radiation damage, having 150% damage against enemies that have 90% of their health remaining, or probably one of the most commonly used ones, being on action still end, you gain 100% of a bonus element, able to roll with any of the elements in the game. And like I said, these were incredibly strong and could actually fully define some builds, and some were entirely worth making builds surrounding. Personally, I do actually like Anointments. I think they're a pretty cool system. I think they're fun. I think they still have some issues, but overall, ever since the ability came to re-roll your Anointments, I've been a fan. But that is precisely the issue, because for a huge portion of BL3's life cycle, you could not re-roll your Anointments. Along with that, it took some time before Anointments were even guaranteed on guns. So you had this build-defining system that had a chance to roll on any of your guns, that had a huge list of possible anointments that you could roll from, alongside the very, very big part system of BL3, and you had to make sure that the element you got on your gun is what you wanted. Or God forbid, you want a gun in all elements. This created a very, very frustrating grind where you could get an absolute banger of a roll, perfect, exactly the gun that you wanted, but it might just not have an anointment, or it might just not have the anointment that you want on it. And in that situation, it's not exactly worthless, but you're gonna keep farming. Is this starting to sound familiar? Because I'm sure you've already been able to draw the parallel to exactly what I'm talking about here. And yeah, it's licensed parts. Licensed parts currently check off almost every single thing that I've listed about anointments. They can be build defining, they only have a chance to roll, and you still have to hope that the underlying gun is what you want. And as we already learned 6 years ago with Borderlands 3, that fucking sucks. I don't know how we're back in this situation, but we sure as hell are, and as I mentioned, I think it's worse, because not only does it have all of the issues that Anointments did on day one, but Purple Gear has up to 3 licensed parts that it can roll, a Legendary has up to 2, enhancements directly feed into how strong licensed parts can be and how important they can be to your build, along with enhancements themselves just being a hell of an RNG fest. And to top it all off, drop rates are so much lower than they were in 3. The one benefit that licensed parts does have currently over launch Anointments is that the overall list of possible rolls is a lot smaller. There's a lot less manufacturers that are making licensed parts than the total list of Anointments. But I think all the additional issues are kind of very heavily counteracting that one benefit. But let me give you a personal anecdote that kind of prompted this video, because I kind of documented this process in my Discord server. I started farming the other day for a TK's wave with an Atlas Altfire. I started at 11 a.m., woke up, got breakfast, you know, maybe fucked around a little bit with some other stuff, decided I wanted to get on the grind. It was not until 5:47 p.m. that I got my TK's wave with an Atlas part. It was almost 7 hours of nearly straight farming, of which I'll say maybe an hour or 2 was me doing something else. So we'll say 4 to 5 hours in total. You want to know how many waves I actually got before I even got the one that I wanted? 3! And 2 of those came within the last hour, because at 4:56, as I was getting frustrated, I took to my Discord server to bitch, saying that from 11 to that 4:56, I had gotten 2 TK's waves, both of which did not have any licensed parts. And I know that this is me bitching about getting very unlucky, okay? I'm fully aware of that fact. But this is not the first time that I've had extreme droughts with item drops while farming in BL4, and it is not the first time that I've been extremely frustrated by them. And this isn't necessarily me bitching about low drop rates, okay? I actually don't really mind the drop rates right now in BL4. In a vacuum, because the problem comes in when you start taking into account the extreme fucking specificity of the rolls that you want in this this game. We had this anointment issue. We complained about this back in BL3 when we had the highest drop rates we've ever fucking seen. Because this was an issue at launch where you couldn't mob through Athenas without getting a backpack full of legendaries. But now we have a system that requires at minimum the same amount of RNG, though I would very easily say higher, with a fraction of the drop rates. Now I don't want this video to just be written off as a complete bitch post, even though that is what a majority of this has been. But I wouldn't have put the effort in to make this video if I didn't love this game. I wouldn't have farmed for 7 hours straight for a shotgun if I didn't love this game. I would like this video to be more so feedback rather than yelling at clouds, so let me give some suggestions. I see maybe 3 options here, 2 of which I think are incredibly good but don't really align with what Gearbox seems to be wanting to go for, and one that does seem to align with that, but I don't think it's as good. So let's start out with the 2 that I think are better because they're pretty damn related, and the first one is re-rolling. Let us get a gun and take it to a machine to re-roll specifically the licensed parts of it. Now, I don't entirely know how this would work because BL4 does not have a parts breakdown, so I don't actually know where licensed parts slot in on the gun. I'm unsure if they're part of the core part system or if there's something that is tacked on after the gun has rolled. So honestly, I have no idea what the feasibility of this is. Gearbox, please give us the part breakdown. But straight up, this solution is just ripped from the Anointment solution in BL3. You have a machine, you take your gun to it, you give it iridium or something, and it re-rolls your parts. It is still a roll of a dice, it's still RNG, you just sit at this machine, press a button, and re-roll over and over again until you have what you want. Is it engaging or elegant? Absolutely not, but it's a solution. Option number 2, and the one that I feel like Gearbox would be even more against, let us swap out licensed parts the same way we swap out firmware. Firmware is another system that without the ability to swap it out, I'd also be bitching about in this video because it too is very similar to Anointments were in BL3. But the fact that we can farm through it on other items and then place it onto the ones that we actually wanted on keeps me from having an issue with it. If we had that exact same system for licensed parts, we'd be fine. But Gearbox, given things that they've said previously, seem very against the idea of gun crafting. And for us to get this system, or for Gearbox to even consider it, I think they would first have to stop seeing the licensed parts system as anything other than Anointments Plus, which I really think is what they are. Again, I have no idea what's actually going on in Gearbox. This is entirely going off of things that they've just said publicly or how they've talked about this system. Now, what's the third potential solution? Well, this kind of goes back to, I don't know how feasible this is. I don't know what's actually going on with the part system. Please, dog, give us the parts breakdown again, but make it so that at max level, whatever that ends up being, currently it's UVH5, there is a 100% chance for every possible licensed part slot to roll a licensed part. Now, I said I had 3 solutions, but I do have one more additional idea that could maybe help. I don't think it would be a full solution like the other 3 could be, but it could help out with not only the licensed part problem, but also enhancements. As part of the weekly rotation, what if we had weekly rotating manufacturer drop zones? Meaning that different zones of the map are designated for each of the manufacturers that week, and those zones have increased drop chances at guns of those manufacturers, at enhancements, especially the legendary ones, and licensed parts on any guns that drop there, including dedicated. This would be pretty similar to the Loot the Universe event from BL3 if you're familiar with that, which personally was my favorite event, and I think this would be a very fun way to bring it back, add it to the weekly rotation, while also solving some of the current pain points with farming. Licensed parts, like Anointments, are incredibly important to builds. We need to be able to get these licensed parts on the guns that we want them on. And right now, with how much variance there is just in guns themselves, to then have the licensed parts tacked on top, and especially with the current drop rates, it makes for a very frustrating farming experience. But that's about do it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you did, definitely consider leaving a like, comment, subscribe, all of that. I'll be live right after this video goes up, right here on YouTube and also over on my Twitch channel, where there will be a link to down in the description below, and just below that is a link to my Discord server where you can come and join and hang out. With that all being said, I hope to see you guys in the next one.